To be able to move our bird, we will need a new property in our bird class. So let's begin this video by adding it. Right below type, I will define a variable called grabbed, which I will set initially to false. This Boolean value will now always contain the information if we are currently dragging our bird with a touch on the screen. Why do we need that? Let's go back to our game scene and work on our touches method, and you will find out soon why this is important. I will now, right below the didMoveToView, begin overriding touches methods. Beginning with touchesBegan, which will be called anytime a touch is happening on our screen. Inside of the method, I will begin by trying to get my first touch. Since for manipulating our bird, we will of course only use one finger, gestures. So let's write if letTouch is touches.first, and if we get this touch, I want to check whether or not this touch was on our bird node. To do so, I will begin by getting the location of my touch with letLocation as touch.location in self. So the position of the touch inside of our scene. I can now easily check if our bird node contains this touch with a very convenient method. In SpriteKit, we can just write if bird.contains, and now I need to pass a CG point, where obviously I will pass the location of my touch, so just location. And if this is the case, I will do three things. First, I want to disable my pan recognizer, since we now want to move our bird, and of course not also move our scene while we are doing so. Therefore, I will write pan recognizer.isEnabled and set it to false, so that we are not moving our camera anymore. Next, I want to set my new bird property, grabbed, to true, by writing bird.grabbed and setting it to true. And finally, I will set my bird's location to the position of my touch by writing bird.position as set to location. This concludes our touchesBegan method for now. And to now be able to move the bird, I will need another touches method, and that is the touchesMoved method. If I begin typing touches here, it will already be suggested by Xcode, so I can just select it. This method gets continuously called if a touch is moving on the screen. Inside, I will again begin with if letTouch is touches.first to get my first touch. Now, I need to check if my bird is currently grabbed by writing if bird.grabbed, and only if that is the case, I will need a location constant as touch.location in self. And I now only want to update my bird's position to the new location by writing bird.position is location. This will now make sure that if we tap and hold on our bird, it will always move with our finger. Finally, we will then need to override the touchesEnded method, which gets called when our touch ends, so the finger is lifted off the screen. In here, I will only want to do something if we have moved our bird before. So I will begin by writing if bird.grabbed, and I'm then able to add my code. If that isn't true, I don't want to do anything in this method. So inside of this method, I will of course release my bird. So I will set bird.grab to false. And the other things we will need to do in this method concern actually launching our bird. But before we are able to do this, we will need some more requirements, such as physics. And before we get into implementing all this, we can already test if we are able to move our bird. So let's run the app and take a look. I can move my bird here if I drag on my square like so. And in the simulator it is of course very laggy, but we can see the basic mechanism. If I now drag in my scene, we can see that we can't pan anymore. And the problem is that we have disabled our pan recognizer to move our bird, but we never actually re-enabled it. I'm also able to drag my bird around to wherever I like, and it would be better if we would constrain this movement to a certain radius around my anchor point to get this slingshot type of behavior. So what do we have to change? We should constrain our bird so that it can't leave a certain radius around our anchor point. Furthermore, we will need to implement a way of actually launching the bird when we let go and not just leave it at its current position. Finally, we should, after a successful launch, in the touch as ended method, re-enable our pan recognizer to be able to move around in our scene again. So let's get to work.